trying something a little bit different today. I am recording a video, potentially for YouTube, in which I don't really have any plan of what I want to say. And it's more of a stream of consciousness thing of wanting to sort out some of my thoughts out loud. And who knows, if it ends up being too much personal garbage that no one else is really going to care about, maybe I won't share it. But part of the idea of it is to put it out there as a sort of behind the scenes thing of just how my brain works and sorts out these things and toys with these ideas. Because I feel like I'm often someone who thinks better out loud than I do quietly to myself. And part of what's happened is I spent a lot of time writing about what happened to me in the Scrabble world over my blog for several years, but I decided I needed to move in the direction of making videos to reach a different audience or reach people in a different way, and I think that's been a good choice in a lot of ways. But there are times when I need to get back to the writing. There are times when I do think that writing is the best vehicle for communicating what I want to communicate and for putting my thoughts together. But I'm actually, in this case, trying to use the video as a tool for helping with the writing. To talk about what I want to write about and help give form to it. I've had this idea for quite a while that I'm going to make a new blog post that really focuses on me individually. Now, you might say that this whole story is focused on me. You might think that I am egotistical or narcissistic or what have you, but if that's your opinion, that's fine. I don't really agree, though. I think that in the writing of this story, I have been interacting with a huge number of other people and spent a lot of time thinking about things from their points of view and how all different stakeholders are affected by things. But I am interested in taking this in a direction of a more specific analysis of me and my psyche and what makes me different than a lot of other people and contributes to the very unusual situation I find myself in. And I already even have a title I intend to use for this particular blog post, this particular writing about me. And it is The Outlier. I do think that there are a lot of ways in which I am an outlier, in which I am an unusual person whose tendencies are very different than a lot of other people's. And for that reason, I'm often misunderstood and misinterpreted. And for that reason, people get into unexpected situations with me. And I do think one of the issues I think of all the time, and I have actually said these exact words to a number of people in this story in my writings and out loud, is a quote which I think is sometimes attributed to Anaïs Nin, although I'm not sure that is actually a correct attribution, which is, we don't see the world as it is, we see it as we are. I think that's important. I think that a lot of people misperceive the situation with me because they think that I think like them. They think about the actions that they see from me, and how a person who is more like them would be behaving and what would be motivating that and all of that. And they come to very wrong assumptions and guesses about what my motivations are, what's going on in my head, what my intentions are, because they've never met anyone who actually thinks like me. They've never actually met anyone who is like me. And I do think that I spoke about this a little bit in this recent story I told about Will Anderson and the way in which he misinterpreted me, giving him a hard time online, and used it as a vehicle to make a sort of sneaky online comment about how comparing me to Evans Clinchy and giving people who thought I had wronged the Clinchies a sort of bandwagon to jump on to show their support for the Clinchies because they believed that I'd been wronging them in some way, when the actual truth was the Clinchies had been wronging me, and I was trying to ignore their bullshit and avoid it. But I do think that a big part of the reason for this, and I don't blame Will for this because he's far from the only person who misperceived it this way, is that most people are just such uncreative thinkers. Most people could sense that I was in an emotionally tough situation, that I was upset or unhappy or lashing out or being negative perhaps in some way toward people. And they had heard these rumors from the Clinchies, and the only way they could possibly make sense of this story was to think of a love triangle, because that is a sort of typical story that is so common to people. And a lot of people thought that a person like me could only be really upset because he was a spurned lover or something like that. And none of you ever even conceive of the idea that I was in love with an abstract board game and not a person. And that the whole reason I was getting to an emotionally upset place was because I really, really loved Scrabble and really wanted to devote my life to playing the game. And these people were actively interfering with me getting access to the game, getting access to the best players, were poisoning the minds of several of the best players I'd already built some community with. And most of you will never be as in love with an abstract board game as I am to even see things from that kind of way. And I just think how boring all your lives are. How dumb it is that you only think of things in terms of these kind of love triangles. How that is just such a played out story I've heard a million times before. And I'm more creative than that. I'm more interesting than that. And I blame you for just having such an uncreative vision of me. I think that I also see I've written about before how I don't really come from a single social class. There are things about my upbringing that are both upper class and lower class, and that I sort of managed to live between social classes. I've been rich and poor at different times in my life, and it means that I get a lot of perspective about how the world looks to people of all these different social classes. But I still feel like I don't really fit in with any one of them. I remember I was a scholarship student at my private high school, and I had some social problems getting along with certain people, fitting in the early going, but I actually became much better at it in the later years of high school. But one of the things I really remember about that time is that I never had a regular lunch table in the cafeteria. I was always floating around from one table to another and sort of sitting with different people each day. And I get along with a lot of people very well out of different groups, but I wanted to keep sort of mixing it up and reshuffling the deck and interacting with different people and different groups of people rather than sort of falling into one niche, into one clique. And of course, a lot of the people who have wronged me in the Scrabble world are very cliquish people who have formed a very high school cafeteria-like clique within the Scrabble world, and I am far from the first person to notice and say this sort of thing about their culture and their way of doing things and compare them to bullying high schoolers, because that's exactly what they've been behaving like. And I do think one of the things that's kind of funny is that these people did try to bully me. They have been very nasty and bullying toward me and toward other people in the community. And if I were perceived simply as a victim of bullying, I probably would have gotten a lot more sympathy. But part of the reason that people are often not sympathetic to me is because I'm so good at standing up against this bullying, at not being bullied, and at fighting back harder, that it's hard to see me as the victim. And I don't actually want to be seen as the victim. I don't want to be seen as somebody who is helpless and can't do anything for myself. I want to be seen as someone who is a fighter, who can stand up against bullies, who can fight back, who can represent myself well, who has the self-respect not to allow myself to be gaslit, not to allow myself to be disrespected by this community so much. But part of the problem is that my very strength in fighting off these people has allowed them to invert the story and paint a picture that I was actually the bully all along and that they were victims, which is absolutely fucking absurd, because these people bullied me for years ahead of time. And not only did they bully me for years before I did anything, and I was just absolutely perfect gentleman in response to all of it, In a way, it was because I was so good at being a gentleman in response to it. I was so good at letting this drip off my back that the full vision of the extent of their bullying wasn't really visible to most of you. So it wasn't until the situation became too painful for me and as I started speaking up and lashing out that you even bothered to perceive what was going on. And then the only thing you could perceive was this really angry yelling person, oh, he must be the aggressor. No, you were perceiving a person who had been bullied for years and was doing all the work of fighting it off by himself and was so good at handling that on his own and fighting his own battles that you didn't even know what was happening right in front of your eyes. That's something I want to tell the reporter. I told him I wouldn't name him anymore in this stuff, and I don't know if he's watching this or not now, but I'm grateful that the reporter took some time to learn my story and write some stuff up, and it never turned into a published article, and that's okay. But I do believe that there was a time when he was potentially more on my side, and he knew he was not getting enough feedback from people who were not on my side, and he couldn't write a well-balanced enough article for that. And I actually spoke up and did different things in terms of giving him contact information and inciting these other people to even give them a reason to speak up so that he could get more sides of the story, because I thought it's what I needed to do in order to get a publishable piece made. But the funny thing is that I think that once he started talking to other people, he started getting gaslit. He started getting fooled. He started actually being pretty sympathetic to the people who were lying through their fucking teeth to wreck my life. Why? Because I was so angry. And because he, like most of you dumb humans, can't stand anger and are less likely to trust the person who's so fucking angry. And this is the thing that to me is just fucking dumb. I get that you're biologically wired this way. I get that it comes back to our caveman hunter-gatherer roots or whatever, that there was a time when if someone was really angry, they were a danger. And for, I'd say, especially for a lot of women in the world, that's still the case. You see anger, you see the threat, and you think you need to run away, you need to protect yourself from it. I am a person who has a more than proven track record of being an extremely honest person. I have earned the right to be trusted and believed the first time I say things every single time, because I have over 48 years on the planet proven that I am one of the most honest people on the planet. And if you see me getting to a point of being so freaking angry, it's often because, not only of the ways I've been disrespected, but because of the fact that you didn't believe me the first fucking time. Because of the fact that you are so inclined to avoid the truth that you don't want to hear. And I have made a lifetime career, a passion project of telling people the things they need to hear and they don't want to hear. And you all need to start realizing that is the greatest gift you're getting from me. I am the person who tells you what you don't want to hear, even though you really need to hear it. I am the person who gives you your vegetables, who makes you eat them. I am, to some extent, your judge. I'm a Libra. I believe in the scales of justice very highly. And I know there are a lot of people who probably are pissed off at me or don't like me because they think, who am I to judge them? They think that I'm overstepping or being a bad person because I'm being so judgmental, because I'm being so condescending. And my answer to this is, I'll stop being so condescending when you show me that you are worthy of something other than my condescension. So many of you have been so fucking dumb, have wronged me so fucking much, have gotten in the way of my life with your stupid petty concerns that are so far beneath me, that you deserve nothing but my condescension, and you will get nothing but my condescension until you get the fuck out of my way and let me live my life the way I want to do it. All I want to do is play a game that I'm one of the best at the world at, and it doesn't harm anyone for me to do that. The only reason you think it harms you is because you committed yourself to a particular course of action for so fucking long, and for the truth to be out there, and for me to be seen as just a normal person who's allowed at tournaments, and all of that completely dispels the illusions and forces the world to see what bullying fuckheads you are. But guess what? You are bullying fuckheads. And I gave you lots and lots of opportunities to get out of this in a way that saves face. And you have all lost all of those opportunities. You have forfeited any opportunity to get out of this story in any way that saves face. And now what is going to happen, what I absolutely will make happen, what I will spend every last living breath that I have making happen, and is make sure that the entire world knows the full fucking story and sees you all for the immoral shitbags that you are. Judgment is coming for all of you. It is inexorable. It is unavoidable. It is inevitable.